Welcome to The Real Recipe, the podcast that brings you the perfect blend of real estate trends and topics, where we serve up fresh insights and sizzling strategies. So let's get cooking.
Welcome back.
Welcome
back.
Back to
back.
We're good. We're good.
Kiefer Garcia with us again.
Yes.
Same day. I'm going to just put it out there. Same day.
Oh, in case everybody notices, the same
outfit.
Same sweater, the same
outfit,
jacket.
yes.
Yeah. I normally get yelled at for that. But we just wanted to cram this topic in too, because it really is such an interesting one. And I feel like a lot of the brokers and realtors we work with are always bringing it up, especially if you're new to the business, just certain things to be cognizant of. And that's buying and selling with FIRPTA clients and then ITIN buyers. So again, Kiefer Garcia from Garcia Law, welcome back. Just wanted to chat a little bit about that. So I'm going to let you jump right into it. And talk about
just explain
that.
to us what those two
Break
acronyms
those two
are.
acronyms down for
and
people
then,
listening.
Yeah, so we can kind of get an understanding of what that is.
Perfect. So FIRPTA is the Foreign Invest in Real Property Tax Act. So we usually call it FIRPTA, and basically that means that anyone who is not a green card holder, lawful permanent resident, or U.S. citizen must be subject to FIRPTA. And what that is a 15% withholding. So a lot of people call it a penalty. It's not a penalty.
Or a tax.
Or
yeah.
a tax. It's
Yeah.
not that. It's basically if I sell a property for, let's say, $1 million, and I do not have a green card or a U.S. citizenship, I basically, at the time of sale, 15% gets withheld.
Mm-hmm.
So that goes to taxes, because basically the United States says that you can't come in here, sell, and then just benefit from it and just take your money somewhere else.
Now, just to jump in there real quick on that, as a seller, the title company or the settlement agent is withholding this. You'll see it withheld on the closing statement again.
Right.
People always assume it's a tax. It's not. It's a withholding. And then we have a time period after we close in which we need to remit that to the proper authorities, and they hold it until the time you file your taxes. So people always wonder how they pay that at closing.
Correct. Right. And another thing that we get asked a lot is, even if I lose money, right, do I still have to report it under the Form 1040-NR to the IRS? Yes. The answer is yes. You have to still report it, whether you make money or lose money, right?
Oh, this goes back to the one that we talked about a couple weeks ago with the guy with the bag of cash. Mm-hmm. I can totally see where this covers. No, don't mind me, but I can totally see where I'm going. I got $1 million property. I'm going to sell this for $900. By the way, there needs to be a bag here for $200,000,
No.
right?
So we'll hold it, we'll remit it. But it's tough because if someone's going to sell a property and they don't know these things up front, they get told this and they're like,
Yeah.
that's like, my proceeds are going where? You know,
Right,
because they might
right.
have a mortgage or something, or not a mortgage, but they might have, something to be cognizant of if they're going to try and buy something else or planning to do something else with that money. So really, who's subject to that, I should say? Who's really subject to that?
So to go into even more specifics, people who do not have a green card, U.S. citizenship, or LLCs, partnerships that are international, right?
Okay.
Sure.
So LLCs, partnerships, any corporations that are not domestic are still subject to that. So any foreign persons meaning individuals or companies.
Okay. And what happens if you have two individuals and one of them is, I know, you love these questions. One of them is a foreign individual and the other one is not. They live here either, whether they're part of a, corporation together or, they're just two individuals that own property together. How does that work?
We get that a lot in our immigration law practice. So if there's two individuals, let's call them husband and wife, and husband is a U.S. citizen, but wife is national from, let's say, Brazil. That wife who's Brazilian is subject to FIRPTA, but the husband is not.
But only for her portion of the asset.
Only for her person.
Right, so let's say it's 50-50. FIRPTA only applies on her 50%.
15%.
Yeah, but the 15%,
50%,
15% of the 50%,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Okay, got it.
Interesting. Okay. What are some common misconceptions about this other than the fact that it's a tax? That's a big one because it's not a tax, it's just a withholding. What are some other, misconceptions or some issues that can arise from someone who's trying to sell, being a foreign individual or, like you said, a foreign entity that's trying to sell?
The number one thing is a lot of people ask me, I don't have a social, so I can't buy. That's a common myth. No, you can do it with an ITIN and a tax identification number, which is somewhat easy to get.
Yeah, don't you? I think you literally can just go online and apply, like, and get the number.
Correct.
Like, almost immediately, I think, right? Like
It takes a few weeks. You have to use your passport and send it in
Oh, okay.
to the IRS, but it's fairly easy. And I always recommend it because, in even immigration, we tell people, do what's right. Report your income, and that'll help you in buying a home
Yeah.
with your ITIN number. So it's definitely something, Ryan, you probably know, and it
Yep.
helps a lot. So it's something that we always recommend, but that's a common misconception that, I don't have a social, so I can't buy. And when I hear that, well, no, let's have a discussion because you're missing out on something.
Sure.
And one of the positives about talking about this topic is a lot of times the people who are in this boat or in this category have a lot of cash.
Sure.
Sometimes they're business owners, and they're asking, how do I do something for my children for the next generation? And I say, well, real estate, invest. You can do it because in the long run, they can use this property to pay for college, to pay for high school, whatever
Sure.
it is.
Sure.
So it's a great way, and that's a positive where people who are building wealth can do it in this way. Sometimes they don't know about it, right? And it's our job to educate them.
Sure.
Hence
Yeah.
why we're here.
Right. Interesting. So what does that process look like then? I'm not from this country. I want to buy a piece of real estate here in the United States. What does that process look like? And just in a nutshell, kind of like beginning to end, because there's also a level of how do I get my money here too? Especially working with a settlement agent here. Like I know for us, if it's foreign funds, we require it to be kind of seasoned in our account for a certain amount of time before someone purchases. It has to come from a domestic bank account, or it has to be wired in here. If you're getting a check, it has to really be, it can't be no currency,
Well, you can do it. It
Issues.
just gets really complicated because
Right.
you need the statement from the other, right? It's so
Because I say you talk to the lender.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
it gets
Trusted lender.
like, I mean, it just gets like you're having to get the bank statements from a foreign country, and then have the language converted into English, and then have it verified. It gets really complicated really quick.
Well, I think most of the buyers I see that are foreign usually have cash. A lot of them aren't.
But the other thing, too, the other
yes.
piece of that too is even getting the cash out of some of these countries
Right.
here into the U.S. is not as easy as it sounds, right? I have a lot of experience with Asian clients, and let me tell you, trying to get the money out of some of those countries, it can take a while, months before the money can get released out.
Well, there's usually a limit to what.
There's limits,
or
yeah. There's
to the
all
bank.
kinds of different rules and regulations for that money coming here, but you want to put the money here and put it to work. That's it. You got to be prepared for it. So it's good to ask the questions up front, like, what do I need to be doing? Okay, I need to get an ITIN. I need to get the money here. I need to get an account open. And then I can go buy, and then I can ultimately move forward with it. But it's you got to. You're right. You got to do your due diligence up front. That always gives me tongue twister. So yeah, it can create some complications for sure.
Correct. And also there's immigration consequences. You have to be very careful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what aspects of that are some of the challenges too?
Well, if I have a husband petitioning a wife, for example, from another country, and she's bringing in funds from another country, well, we're filling out an affidavit of sponsorship from the husband saying that he needs to support that wife.
Yep.
But now there's money coming in from where, why, and it's just more questions asked, things like that. So again, your immigration attorney, your real estate attorney, your lender, your title company.
Yeah.
We're all communicating to make sure we do what's best for the client.
Yeah, it's always challenging, even to kind of go back to the lending thing, with moving money out of a country in here, we have to make sure that the money is transferred correctly and sitting in a U.S. bank account, and it can get challenging very quickly. And then the other thing too is that people show up with cash too. All of a sudden we've got $100,000 in cash, and we're going to go deposit that in the bank, and that complicates the matter a little bit too. So but I guess listen, you're right. You do want to be a vehicle for investment purposes. Real estate has been a tried and true strategy for a long time, and for people that are coming into this country, that may not be citizens, there are avenues to do it. But consult an attorney who knows what he's doing, right? Consult lenders that know what they're doing. Those are the important steps to start with, and then figure it out from there, right? Because if you set it up correctly and do it correctly, it's not that complicated or not that that daunting of a task to do. But you need to be set up correctly for it. You can't just walk in here one day with 200 grand cash and move 500,000 from another country and
You can't wing it.
yeah, you can't just wing this. This isn't something you're just going to go and go. Yeah, let's go buy a piece of property tomorrow.
Now, if someone's applying for citizenship here and they intend to, maybe they want, like you said, a good way to kind of get in, into that application process is to purchase real estate. Does that help expedite that at all if they're applying for citizenship here? Like, how does that work, or it's the same timeline?
No, yeah, it wouldn't affect that at all in that petition. The only way we see any type of benefit from investing in the country is when we look at EB type of visas,
Okay.
which would not delve into the husband, wife, wife, husband, siblings type of thing.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't matter.
Okay.
A good friend of mine, he's from South Africa. He before he came here, his company was going to move him to the U.S., but with his immigration hadn't come in yet, his green card status. So he intentionally did not move to the U.S. until he had his green card, because he didn't want to come here, buy a house, and then and then if something happened with this company,
He would have to leave.
he would I think literally if he was fired on it, and you could probably attest to this, if for some reason he left his company, whether voluntarily or involuntarily, he would have had on a work visa. He would have had to leave within 30 days.
Correct.
Right. So, he would have been stuck here, or he would have had a house and wife and kids. So he intentionally moved to Canada first, waited there for his visa to come in, and then came to the U.S. And then decided to buy until he got here, because he didn't want to jeopardize moving his family all over the place. But it's ultimately there are options to buy real estate here in the U.S. You don't necessarily need to be a citizen to do it.
Right.
You can do it. You can get financing. It's not. It's a little bit of a process to do it, but it's not overly complicated. But you have to have some money to put down too. You can't just walk in. You're not going to get a 5% Fannie Mae loan and down a multifamily, and that's not going to work. That
Right.
you can't do. But certainly you can find a good piece of real estate or single family house, and you can get financing for it. On in certain situations. So not that crazy. So.
And if I'm a seller who's a foreign individual and I'm looking to sell my property, what realistically am I looking at percentage-wise that's being withheld from the closing? I mean, obviously there's different tax implications,
Right.
But
The 15% for FERPTA, if it's we can talk about mansion tax, right? If it's a certain amount over purchase price.
Right.
I'm sorry, the purchase price is over a certain amount. But those are really the ones that when we sit down with clients, we say, look, expect X, Y, and Z, because like you
Okay.
said, if they get to closing or midway through the closing and the closing process, and they find out that wait, what's FERPTA?
15% of their money
Yeah.
is being
Now, what
withheld.
about, and the same thing applies to commercial too?
For commercial, that I would have to double check. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, 'cause that's interesting, because
But I would imagine so, because FERPTA is federal, right? So any gain or loss that you have in the sale of property, you have to withhold that.
right.
You have
Even, and you said before, I think it was a foreign LLC or foreign
Correct.
entity owned,
Right.
you would have to withhold, right? So,
Right.
if you're a foreign entity or you have a foreign company that you're going to buy a piece of real estate here in the U.S., I would think that you've got enough legal counsel to tell you, okay, you're going to be buying this in an LLC, and this is how it's going to go, and that's still going to apply regardless, unless you get an LLC that's domesticated here in the U.S. versus foreign, which isn't exactly easy to do either. But
You would hope so.
Yeah.
Because the things that we see people tell us that attorneys have said, it's sad.
yeah, I listen.
It's sad. It's sad.
It really this goes back to, again, what we said before. Who you work with matters. Having attorneys that you work with that know what they're doing. It's almost like an insurance policy, right? It's just like, yeah, okay, I'm paying more, but I know I'm going to be protected. I know I've got, I'm not going to run the risk of violating some rule or law or something. I'm going to be protected, and it's going to wind up saving me money at some point down the road. And unfortunately, people don't get that. They
do
just,
not.
we can do it. We can do it by myself. I'll go to LegalZoom.
Well, we just went
Right.
through it with the closing.
Right, yes.
That we handled with your title company, right? And you did your due diligence. We did our due diligence for our mutual client, and we had to because the seller didn't do their due diligence.
Right.
So we had to remedy the situation now. But
Sure.
because of the title company's due diligence in our office, we were able to resolve it.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
if not, people take shortcuts and you have to pay the price later on.
Yeah.
I know. It's so sad. Why can't it be just easy? Everything has to be complicated. We got to get lawyers involved.
This always
and
seemed like
insurance
such a
companies and-
complicated topic to, or
Yeah.
a complicated thing to do, but really, like, you know, when you sit down and talk about it as the client's counsel, it's really not. It can be done. It's just they have to be aware of it, you know, as a buyer, what they're walking into, and when they go to sell, being counseled on what needs to be done or what they can expect to be withheld at closing. Again, common misconception is that it's a tax that's paid at closing, and it's not. It's just the withholding, but also making sure the seller is somewhere where they can appropriately get documents signed as a seller,
yeah, that's
especially if
another
they're
one,
not
too.
in the country. A lot of people just send over their transfer documents that the attorney prepares, and like, I got this signed by a notary in Brazil or
No, you got-
wherever.
yeah.
You have to go to the U.S. Embassy or the consulate and have it properly notarized. And these are requirements of the counties in order to record these documents. It's not just an attorney request or a title company request.
That's an
So-
8-hour drive, and I can't
well,
get there.
sometimes if it's a quick turnaround closing, I mean, you need to make an appointment at the embassy. You need to make an appointment at the consulate, and in
that's
certain
right.
countries,
And it's weeks out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you
Weeks
don't
out.
you don't walk in and just have a walk-in
yes,
appointment.
no, there's no walk-in
Right, right.
appointments
Yeah,
available.
you're not going to the bank to take out a couple dollars. Yeah.
So, I mean, again, in closing, when we've discussed this before, it makes the process seem so much less daunting because it's outlined for the client
Yeah.
properly. And especially if you're a realtor that's, working with a foreign buyer, a foreign seller for the first time, just having knowledge of these things is so important. That way, when you take the listing or you have a buyer who's already looking, you can go into the situation feeling well armed. Like, you got to make sure that you're going to have to make an appointment at the consulate or the embassy to get these documents signed, or you got to make sure you know the regulations of your
Yeah.
foreign
Yep.
bank in
Yep.
order to send funds. Is there a limit per month or whatever it might be for the bank or for the individual
Sure.
country? So knowing all these things going in makes
Do you
it so much
see
easier.
more transactions like this, either foreign investment or ITIN? Do you see that number growing?
Definitely. In the past few months, we've closed a lot of non-QM, loans,
Yeah.
I-10 borrowers, because I think the education is starting to trickle down, right?
Okay.
And I think that there's a change coming where people are becoming more educated and want to be more educated. Obviously, social media helps, but there's also a lot of misinformation.
Sure.
So we have to count on our community outreach, our community leaders, and people just like you two, right, to give that information. That's so crucial because it affects generations to come.
Yeah, for sure. And you're right. I think it is a topic that for us is like, oh, this is not that big a deal. It's an easy topic, but for somebody who's not a citizen of the states, they look at it and they say, oh, I didn't know I could do that, or wow, I can do that. Oh, okay, here's your process. This is what you have to do. So it's it's just about communicating the topic, right?
We all benefit from it because
Yeah,
if people
sure.
start buying and investing because there's cash out there. Our communities are better, right?
Yeah.
So
It just means there's going to be, instead of 40 offers, it'll be 50 offers on a house. Right? I mean, that's, all right, no big deal. I mean, it'll keep the real estate prices floating for a little bit longer.
Well, that was good info. Thank you.
Yeah,
so
that
much,
was
Kiefer.
awesome. I
This
did,
is always an interesting
yeah,
one.
that's-
We could
yeah.
go on in different directions with
Yeah,
this.
the
for days,
the
I'm
ITIN
sure.
thing is, to kind of summarize too, right? Is it's not really that difficult to get financing. You just gotta kind of know where to go to get it, and you're gonna have to put down a little bit of money. It's not like you can just get it with no money down or very little money down. But it's not that difficult to do. You can actually do it and get the money that you need to buy a house if you don't have all the cash to do it. And the FERPTA thing is always that's easy. That's just an easy one, right? That's just tell your client when you're selling the house, hey, listen, you're not a U.S. citizen. You're gonna have to take 15 off the top to do this.
You would think a lot of people miss it.
Yeah.
Fair point.
Well,
fair point.
a lot of
That's why
times
we're
it-
here.
it
That's why we're here, folks.
It doesn't come out until the end sometimes, and they start pulling title and stuff
Right.
like that. We
But
start
if it's $1
asking
million
questions.
house and it's 150 grand, you're like, hey, where's my 150 grand?
Yeah.
That's a very
Well,
unhappy client.
It's
Yeah,
just
right.
it's an incentive obviously to
And
make sure people file.
it was a 5-minute conversation when we started the transaction.
yeah.
And that may have stopped the transaction from happening, but
It's my job, or whoever's job it is to sit down and talk with them, because
Right.
I'd rather have that unpleasant deal die right away Then
Right.
you have to do a closing and then.
Right. Again, it's who you work with matters, right? You know, you're working with the right people. They'll counsel you the right way, and obviously that's why we have guys like you on, because
I appreciate it. Thank you.
help
Thank
help
you.
guide us through this stuff, even though can be mundane. It's important to get out there, right? You know, but these are crazy topics, and people need to know about it. So, all right.
Perfect.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you.